You tuned that guy up with basically a broomstick, a cut-off broomstick. And that's how much damage you did with just a small piece of wood, right?
Yep. That's right. It's a effective improvised weapon. Anything that lays around, just utilizing the same techniques if it was a weapon or just an improvised broomstick or something.
Take that, protectionist. Try to outlaw this. Good luck. You're watching the Nutnfancy Project. This is our longtime friend, Officer Jared Wihongi.
Good to see you again. Good to be back.
Good to see you, man. It's been a long time.
It has.
A long time.
Been kind of traveling all over the world, teaching stuff, and keeping busy here in Utah too. So yeah, glad to be back.
So maybe some new subscribers don't know who you are. By way of introduction, Officer Jared, as we call him here in TMP, he does have a YouTube channel here in TMP called Officer Jared. He never monitors that. Subject to change.
Yes.
Subject to change.
Back in business.
Yeah. But Officer Jared has gone shooting with us. He's a great shooter. Obviously, he's a combative arts dude, and he has a particular style. He instructs out all over the world to militaries, police forces, edge weapons, staff, hand-to-hand. That's what he does. That's how he makes his living. He makes his living by kicking people's asses.
Pretty much, yeah. And showing lots of other people how to do it also. Right,
instructing. You're an instructor.
Exactly.
A worldwide instructor in combative arts.
Yes.
Okay, remind guys your style.
Okay, so founded and centered around the Pakiti-Tertia system of Kali. Kali is one of the Filipino combat arts. The Pakiti-Tertia system is one of the more renowned of those arts that's utilized heavily around the world, special operations community, law enforcement, and so on and so forth. So centered on Pakiti-Tertia Kali, and I draw on my background of as a SWAT operator, police officer, street patrol officer, and working in different environments and different martial arts exposure that I've had also to kind of draw on things to create an effective combat system.
Excellent. Okay, I got to change batteries real quick. We'll pick it right up. Officer Jared. Okay, so we might want to say at this point, there's all kinds of different styles.
There are. The sky's the limit, really. There's so many different systems from different parts of the world, and even here within the United States, you've got a whole smorgasbord of things that you could train in.
Way to tune guys up, inflict pain, deal death if you have to.
Yeah.
Tons of styles. So this video is not saying, hey, this is the end-all style, do it this way. It's just a technique.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer and respecter and lots of different effective arts that are out there, and I just happen to teach a particular system based on my background. I
have a huge amount of respect for Officer Jared just because he's a practitioner, and you have to be a practitioner to get good at this stuff. I mean, devoting a lot of hours, day by day, month by month, year by year, to get your skill set, practice and up to that level. And I'll never have time for it, so I have to tune into someone who does and who knows what he's doing.
Yep.
That's you.
Yep, that's right, and that's what I do for a living. I don't expect everyone out there to be able to do all the research that I'm able to do. So I basically am a resource for different people, military, law enforcement units, and civilian martial arts organizations around the world to kind of help them use my background and what I do for a living to show them some ways of inflicting damage.
The cool thing about OJ, as we call him too, Officer Jared, is that he's just very low-key. I mean, the guy, I just don't sense an ego coming out of there. It's there somewhere, but it's well masked.
Yes, exactly.
It's well masked. Every dude's got an ego, right?
Yes.
You have to, but it's well under control.
Yes.
You're a grounded dude.
And I think that helps me to be the type of units that I train, special operations units around the world. It helps them to open up when I don't come in as the biggest, baddest bull in the herd. I come in and just kind of get people to break down barriers so that they open up and learn, and which is usually the first step if you're going to train people.
Yeah, you and I talked about that in 2011 in our vids we did together, just a couple, about as an instructor you have to break down those walls.
Barriers, yeah.
So there can be some real teaching going on.
Yes.
And ego really gets in the way of that. A guy has to acknowledge that, hey, there's something I need to improve, and then once that ego's taken away, real improvement can occur.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So good instructor. Today what we're going to do is we're going to kind of summarize what we talked about in 2011, the importance of mobility and footwork according to your style.
Yes.
Then we're going to apply it to a katana.
Yes.
Okay? Anything you want to say about the katana as You're not the worldwide expert,
No,
right?
so yeah, so basically, the katana, I don't profess to be an expert, and I really enjoy and respect the Japanese sword fighting arts. I've never had the opportunity to do a lot of training in it. I'm not an expert in it, it's not my field, but what I do is apply the principles from what I do know into that particular weapon system.
Okay, and let's go over those principles.
Yeah,
you want to start with your broomstick again? Or you
Start
want
with the broomstick, yeah. So, so just real, and I'll go over these, fairly briefly. But
Sure.
the system that I train, the Pikiri Tusha system of Kali, is founded in weaponry, and we adhere to the principle that the nature of warfare is the utilization of weaponry, not empty hands. The warrior of every tribe and village had to learn to use weapons before he went and defended himself against the warriors of the next village. And so weaponry is what we focus on, and then we take the principles of weaponry and apply them to the empty hand. So there's some of those principles that we are, and we utilize sticks like this as a training tool. That could represent a machete, it's about the same length. It could represent a knife, it could represent a crowbar, it could represent any improvised weapon. So to kind of keep things simple, we focus on angles and striking and moving, fire and maneuver. Shooting and moving, basically. So we've got the ability to hit hard, hit fast, and hit accurately, and then the ability to maneuver so we don't get hit during that process. And not only not get hit, but we're also able to acquire targets that are open on my opponent. So to kind of keep things really basic, we start off with 4 angles, which are 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's basically drawing a downward on the X and then upward on the X. And then I can use those same angles defensively. If I'm defending against an attack, defending against an attack, defending against an attack, or defending against an attack on the upward angles, I'm utilizing those to attack and to defend, keeping it real simple. And we adhere to the principle of slashing and thrusting. For every slash there's a thrust, and for every thrust there's a slash. I want to use a knife to illustrate that point, but basically,
you got to introduce your knife
okay,
to these
so,
guys.
Yeah, so
remember, this is TMP Nation you're talking to, bro. You just don't throw a knife out
okay.
and not say what it is.
All right, so this is.
Hold up, man. What's this Browning thing? Are you with Browning now?
I'm with Browning.
Okay, there you go.
Browning, one of the kind of an old school weapons manufacturer, designer for the U.S. military.
Yeah.
Our military still uses weapons that John Browning designed over 100 years ago.
Cool.
Browning's getting back into tactical. Black Label is the name of it. So the first thing that Browning's been doing is designing some tactical knives. Okay. This is one of them, the Arbitrator. This is one of the US-made designs. It's basically a fighter. It's a very sturdy design. And basically in the hand, it's just like a rapier. It's a thrusting sword, a thrusting knife that can be also used for cutting at the same time. So
cool.
So that's
the introduction. Then.
That's the introduction. So
then you were saying, I didn't mean to derail you, but we got to introduce the knife.
So we talk about the principles of thrusting and slashing. So here, I'm cutting on my 4 angles, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then I'm using those defensively, defending against attacks. And then at the same time, for every slash, there's a thrust. For every slash, there's a thrust. So if I cut down and then come back up on the same line, I'm now thrusting. If I slash here, come back on the same line, I am thrusting. So a principle of slashing and thrusting, then I can thrust and slash on opposite lines. Thrust to slash, thrust to slash, thrust to slash, thrust to slash. So thrusting and slashing and utilizing those 2 tools. If I was to change the grip, it would be the same thing. I can thrust, same angles, or I can slash on those same angles. So I'm slashing and thrusting on the same line, slashing and thrusting and slashing, thrusting and slashing. Okay, so it's basically simple angles and the application with the blade of thrusting and slashing. And I can probably apply these principles to the empty hand also. We're not going to focus too much on that for today's intents and purposes. Right. But that's basically the principle of thrusting and slashing. So now, knowing that is one thing, but then knowing how to do it effectively, speed, power, timing, and precision, because I got to be able to connect with targets, and that takes timing and precision, and also have some speed and some power. So when I've connected with the target, I'm having the desired effect. And blades, blades will have, regardless of how hard you're hitting, they're going to have some kind of effect with regards to cutting and puncturing.
Especially with these swords, you connect once.
That's exactly, because when you get
it's done.
Once a weapon gets beyond a certain length, like a blade of this length, almost wakasashi length, the short sword, can be manipulated fairly easily with one hand. After the weapon starts reaching out from the armpit to the fingertips, past the length of the fingertip, depending on the weight of the weapon, it usually starts requiring the use of two hands. And so that's when you get into short stuff, tactics, and then the application of a two-handed weapon like a katana. So we've got angles, we've got thrusting and slashing, and we've got all the same principles applied to a double-handed weapon.
That's a great rule of measure that you're saying, length of the arm.
Yeah.
Couple things. One, I think when you talk about sword, and I'm no expert, but I do have common sense. We talked about you connect once, maybe twice with a dude, done.
Exactly.
But then you have a realm of competition and style, and you're going for points where technique is everything. Would that be fair to say?
Exactly. You get
where you go do a floor exercise. I mean, you got to have everything just right. Sometimes I think guys get confused between those two things.
Yeah, you've got the some people call it the martial arts and crafts. You know, just the fancy, cool stuff that doesn't have as much street application. Has some, but does not necessarily focused on the street application. So you've got things like a form, right? Focusing on form. It's a good step towards learning application, but in and of itself, it doesn't help someone become a better fighter. And so if I'm being judged on form, like some kind of a competition of that nature, then the form is important. Other than that, if you're connecting to targets, then you're probably going to have the desired effect with a blade. So that's kind of what we're more focused on.
Excellent. Okay, so you're saying the techniques you learn can be applied to any weapon. It'd just be a difference in length. Should be knife to short sword to wakizashi,
even to the empty hand,
katana.
or screwdriver. You know,
whatever it is. Yep. Okay, so let's transition to the katana. We've already established that that's not really your preferred weapon and what you've trained with, but you're going to apply those principles you just talked about to this sword, correct?
Exactly. Yep. Exact same principles. So.
Okay, we have a selection here from TMP we're going to draw from.
Okay.
Which one? It's up to you.
All right, so we'll just start with this one here in the middle. Okay.
Sweet. This is going to be, I have to label them. It's going to be a Ronin 28-inch Dojo Pro number 3, 2 pounds 7 ounces, 1060 steel from Ronin Forge. Okay. Great dojo katana, a practitioner katana.
Okay. So this one here, again, a weapon of this length is going to be, depending on the size of the individual wielding it, it's going to be a little harder to be really effective with one hand. Not impossible, just a little more difficult to wield. So this is something that I would probably prefer to put 2 hands on. As we go through and talk about the actual, again, I don't profess to be an expert in the application of Japanese weaponry.
Right.
As much as I love Japanese weaponry, it's not my forte. So, but applying the same principles. Okay, so I've got
Let me move this real quick. Get this out of the way. Okay.
Can we come back and check these out?
Totally can. You can do it right now if you want. I don't care. We're real casual here. They want to check the swords out. What guy does not get turned on by swords?
Exactly. Swords
Seriously.
and guns. Swords, knives, and guns. And
so we got some of our army brethren over here with the swords. They just want to check them out.
That's right.
Who doesn't? Swords are manly.
Exactly.
They're cool. Mostly collectible in my realm, but what we're talking about now is the application of it being a weapon.
I've got my own collection. In fact, I've got a 300-year-old wakizashi in my collection. So
maybe sometime we'll take a look at that, and we'll do some steel cutting tests with it.
Sweet.
Your sword against rebar.
Yeah, exactly.
Not. We're kidding. We are kidding. Let me throw in a safety note here, real quick.
Okay.
So you're getting ready to start swinging a big piece of steel around.
Yeah.
Extremely dangerous.
Yes.
And as a cameraman, I got to steer well clear. You can.
I don't really care if you're doing it.
Oh, Jay.
You might
There's that sense of humor we love so much. So be careful.
Okay.
Not you, to the guys on the other end of this camera.
I won't hit any of them either.
Okay. Be careful. These things deserve a huge amount of respect. If you start swinging around the house with your cat nearby, you might have a little headless cat running around.
Yeah, exactly.
I kid you not. So treat him with respect.
At least try and make it look like an accident.
I don't know what happened. He grabbed the sword. He started playing with it. Next thing I know, he's got no head, honey. Okay, take it away, OJ.
Okay.
Mr. Katana, you've said you are the worldwide expert in this?
Something like that, yeah. So I'm going to have all these katana iaido practitioners on the other end of this camera kind of critiquing. But like I said, a weapon's a weapon, and we adhere to what we call the transferable methodology principle. If I train sound principles with one weapon, I should be able to apply them to another. And sometimes a good friend of mine, Guru Mark Danny, calls it consistency across categories. Having consistent strategy and tactics across different categories. So with regards to holding the weapon, again, if I'm getting 2 hands on the weapon, and I can have my my dominant hand foot forward, or I can have my other foot forward. I like to train both sides. So and the footwork that I like to train is very symmetrical. I've got a left foot forward position, and I've got the exact same position on the right side. Even if I was shooting, I could utilize both sides, so I'm able to exploit angles better if I've got the ability to use either lead forward. So from the weapons position, you know, holding it whether I'm holding it in a central position, I'm going to have to somehow, unless I'm doing a thrust, and I could step in and thrust with the weapon, I'm going to have to chamber the weapon to what I would call a number one chambered position, a high load, a shoulder load position. This would be a number one shoulder load. This would be a number two shoulder load. A high load position would be something I can just come down, strike straight down.
Is that your max power position over the head?
It's going to be a position where I can be fairly deceptive, because from this position I can come straight down, I can come on what I call a number one angle, or I can come on a number two angle. So it's going to be harder to predict. If I'm here at this position here,
he knows where you're going.
He knows I'm probably going to come on this number one angle. So there's that's kind of it's a deceptive position as far as not knowing where I'm going to strike.
Okay.
If I come straight over the head, and again, it may be from a position where I've got my support side forward also.
Now, OJ makes all these moves look very easy. They're not. He practices them day in, day out.
Yes.
So, what if a guy grabs a katana? What's two moves he can do?
If someone grabbed onto it, I'd probably just...
No, I mean if he has a katana, he wants two moves to do
gotcha.
defensively. Two simple moves. How about the from shoulder striking
if
positions?
I have a katana also, you mean?
No.
Oh, okay. So
he's just using it as a home defense weapon, for instance.
I gotcha. Okay, so so basically,
I think if you're going katana versus katana, that's a whole. That's a series of videos.
You probably did step A, B, and C wrong if you got into that katana.
And both will get cut, says I.
Yes, it's very hard.
Both guys are going to get chopped.
Yeah, some people say you got a 1 in 3 chance. You're really good, he dies. He's really good, you die. You're both good, and you both die. So that's the kind of one.
Very accurate, I would say.
Yeah.
So just say two maneuvers guys could do.
Sure. So just like we talked about with the stick and the knife, coming through on a number one angle, okay, and then coming up to the left shoulder and coming through on a number two angle. But then if I was to follow through, it's actually, and then, you said two, I'm going to show 4. I could come upward and then come upward. So I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4.
Notice how he's reversing the edge as he comes down low, though. The edge is being completely twisted, so he has the cutting edge presented to the opponent at all times.
Precisely. We call that blade respect in Pikiti Tertia, which means always turning the weapon so that you've got the primary cutting edge forward. Even when I'm using a stick, I'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so so basically almost like a baseball swing, although it's a baseball swing would be more coming through like that. Okay, so. And even if it was something as rudimentary as a baseball swing, although with a baseball swing I might be turning the weapon over, the sword I would want to maintain the cut. Okay, but from here.
Hold on, freeze that position real quick. Come back down here. That looks like technique right here. How you're locking it into your side. Is that true to say?
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm not. If I was to cut through like this, then I couldn't see from here as I lock it through. I could thrust back in. So
nice.
I could cut
exactly.
and then thrust. If I was
so you're ready to fight just from that position.
Exactly.
Cool.
From here. If I was to come all the way through, then I would have to bring it back. If I was to thrust here, I would hit with the back edge. So I could turn it back and then cut, but I don't have the option to thrust back.
You crack me up, dude, because you say you're not good with a katana. It looks like you kind of know your way around the sword a little bit.
What's the dynamics of one weapon a lot of times will translate over to another if there's sound principles. Yeah. Okay,
so let's say a guy sneaks up behind you, you know he's going to kill you, and that guy's a watermelon. What would you do?
I would probably turn.
Yeah.
Top of his head off.
I bet you I missed that because I was getting out of the swing of the sword. Do it again, dude.
So.
Yeah, just do like a couple slices off that.
Just hanging out, you know, with the katana on my shoulder.
Yeah, and the guy, you know the guy's bad, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll turn and cut the top of his head.
Nice follow through too.
So I could turn the weapon back over and.
Excellent.
I'm not actually surprised I did that well.
Those are nice clean cuts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean. You talk about, I think most people probably be fairly educated on how well the Japanese design of blade is, and utilizing the proper principles of power and speed and power, basically turning your hip into, it's an athletic motion like I'm hitting a baseball, throwing a baseball. I turn the hip and follow through, turn the hip and follow through with the movement, get the shoulders involved. And so, and this is I know that we've got another katana that's a heftier blade. And when you get into the dynamics of a heavy blade versus a light blade, it's a give and take. The heavier blade is going to have more girth, so it's going to have more weight, more kinetic energy behind the cut. Think butcher knife, right?
It'll shear better.
The butcher knife is, it's broad because it's got more girth behind it, and it's going to cut better. Just like the barong, the Muslim cutting blade of the southern Philippines, it's like a butcher knife for cutting people. It's got a lot of girth behind it, and so people will be googling the barong of the Moro if you're not already familiar with it. But
the Grossmesser, the German sword, those are huge cleavers. They're just basically cleavers, but they're hard to get in the fight. They don't have the maneuverability and speed that a katana does. A well-balanced katana.
Precise, and that's the give and take. Is you lose
firepower versus mobility.
Right.
We talk about it all the time.
You lose the ability to manipulate the weapon faster and be get more short, accurate strikes in. So it's a give and take. But when you do connect, you're going to cause more damage. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of that longer one, is there anything else you want to say while you're here on that?
Well, I know I wanted to touch real quick on footwork and mobility.
Okay.
I don't like to fighting linear with someone where they're in their strongest position is not the best idea. We like to adhere to the principle of moving on angles and exploiting angles to get primarily to the outside line if possible. Inside line is better than center line, because when I square up with you to fight, okay, ignore the sword in the hand. This is where I square up, because this is where I'm naturally strongest. Okay, I blade my body like I'm in just an aggressive fighting position. So this is the worst place to fight someone from, because this is naturally the best place where I've got more power when I start striking at you. So if you were to maneuver out this way, you'd get to my outside line, and that's going to be preferable. If you maneuver in, you get to my inside line, which is better than center line, but not as good as outside line. And so utilizing my footwork and we use very simple triangular movements. We call them forward and broken triangles, fluid and broken triangles. So basically 1 and 2.
I'm sorry, do that again.
I'm here in my standard position. I do what we call a switch step, and this is what we call a switch step. It's a basic switching leads, and then getting to an outside line angle. So rather than fighting central here, I prefer to get to an angle, whether I'm doing a switch step or a long step, getting out to an angle, and then cutting. And I can use the angles to
do that some more. Guys want to see that. They like you.
Okay, utilizing your angles to get out and attack from position.
Okay, 2 points I want to make right here. Number one, you're an in shape dude, and you're breathing just from that.
Yeah.
It's work.
Well,
and your body's got to kind of be ready for that type of thing.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm trying to talk while I'm moving, but
yeah,
it gets you breathing for sure.
But it's a physical thing. If you're not in shape to do what Jared's doing, forget about it.
Exactly.
And number two, I can't imagine defending against what you just did.
It's gonna be
do difficult. It again. Show it. Here, come over here. I mean, let's say you got a knife and a guy comes out of the hallway doing this. Dude. How do you defend against that?
It's going to be difficult. Yeah.
And even if knowing what you know, your skill set, a guy comes at you like that, you're armed equally as he is.
Yeah.
It's still, you got your work cut out for you, don't you?
Yeah.
If he's committed and he's just going to go, I think that's huge. The guy's going to commit, run.
Yeah, it's going to be a deterrent.
Get to gun distance.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's a whole different subject.
Getting firearms involved, it kind of adds a whole new dynamic.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's give you a longer sword.
Okay.
Do a couple cuts with that, and then compare and contrast. This
one,
generally, my understanding, is the size of most katanas, the 24-inch, I think, or 28-inch, I think.
Huh?
This one coming into your hand, that's a 28, I think. This is a 30-inch, and this is a Cheness Nagasa. 30-inch 9260 steel, 3 pounds 2 ounces. So it's going to be a little bit slower into the fight, but it's going to have good reach.
And that's
double full around this.
And yeah, one of the advantages is reach. Reach is always an advantage. The longer weapon, the longer your standoff distance, and the more likely you can cause damage to him without receiving damage yourself. Right. So
I talk about all the time in my reviews. Reach is huge, especially for someone I think that's not as practiced as you.
It makes it
standoff. It's standoff capability.
So we're fighting from the longer ranges. So reach makes a difference. Again, the longer the weapon, the less wieldy it could potentially become. So there's a give and take between the additional weight that's caused by the additional reach. So that's something to kind of to be aware of. But other than that, the dynamic's going to be very, very similar with regards to the application of the weapon. This one, that last sword, I felt like I could have still done some effective strikes with single hand. With this one, just the additional weight on there, I don't know that I'd be able to, with one hand, be able to control the follow. I could do a good slice, but then the follow-up is going to be a little slower. Okay, so it's going to be, with one hand, it'll be a little harder to manipulate this one.
Just for reference too, Jared's, you do weights all the time, right?
Yeah.
Show the dudes your arms. I know you would never do this. Show them that bruise, actually.
Oh yeah, that's from last week. Last week's.
Some defensive tactics.
Yeah.
He said tactics. He took an elbow, he said.
I took an elbow demonstrating a technique for a combative course last year.
I'm not doing that gratuitously. I'm doing it to show that with an edged weapon of that length, your guns are important. I'm saying that your arms are what's going to be driving it. If you don't have that.
And it's going to be, I always talk about maximizing your technique with.
By the way, that's why I'm not in front of the camera. Just so you know. Okay. There, we got that out of the way.
And anyone can wield the weapon, but to maximize your effectiveness with the weapon and so you've got the tools and you've got the techniques, but then the other T that I think is important, just as important as the tool and the technique, is the traits. The third of those T's. There's other T's I like to talk about too, but of those three, the traits is strength, because speed and strength doesn't always equate functional strength, right? You hear that's the buzzword, CrossFit and guys at powerlifting, all function. But strength that you can use, meaning you're maintaining some flexibility at the same time. Speed, precision, and accuracy. It's going to factor in to help maximize your capability with the weapon that you're using.
Exactly. Okay, so you're talking about the reach of that one. How does it feel in hand versus that 28-inch?
Yeah, very, very similar, really. I mean, the weight is there's marginal difference in the weight. The balance is a little further out on the weapon. It's got a few inches there. So it's in my hands. It feels about the same.
I got to tell you, I love the Katana for its combat capabilities. I mean, there's all types of swords. Each one is almost purpose-built for a specific way of engaging in combat. I love the Katana because to me it's not because of the movies and the hype, I think it's really an awesome fighting machine.
Yeah.
For everything you were saying, the speed, the mobility, it's got the belly on it, can do a slash cut, it's got a penetrating tip, Yeah. It's just really a well-balanced weapon. And for the weight, the one you were just fighting with was 2 pounds 7 ounces. Yeah. That's light for what it can do. Yeah,
that's for sure. And every civilization has evolved the weapons based on technology. Firearms changed a lot of that, and people started shedding armor because it really wasn't protecting them against firearms.
Did you say shedding armor?
Shedding.
Oh, he's Kiwi. It sounds like shit.
Yeah, I speak English.
So they take all that stuff up so they can start moving faster.
Yeah, the swords before that, they had to be kind of clobbering clubs as well as swords because you're ringing people's bells while they're in their armor, because a lot of times your slashes weren't really penetrating, and so that the things kind of, the dynamics of the sword. And the Japanese armor wasn't like the European armor, so they evolved their swords a little differently than the Europeans evolved their swords. And the arts, the way they utilized them were different too. So their swords evolved to the art also.
Yeah. To me, it's primarily a collectible. It's massively cool. It's just like any weapon of destruction. Any real man is drawn to it.
Yeah.
They're just cool to own.
Yeah.
It's like why Shark Week is so popular in Discovery, because people are in awe of sharks because it can bite you in half. This can cut you in half. Literally, it can cut a human being in half. True or false?
True. And they would
absolutely taking an arm off, no problems at all.
One of my recent trips, I teach seminars in Japan, and one of my recent trips, I was kind of educated that they would often use them on slaves, and if you took off the handle, it would be marked on there, and you'd know how many slaves it was tested on, and I was told to a maximum of 7. Now, it wouldn't tell you how many enemies in battle were killed. It would just tell you how many times it was tested on someone to see if it could cut them through and through. And it was they couldn't test it more than 7 times, is what I was told.
Wow, that's cool. That's a great looking sword, and it's functional.
Yep.
God, we could make this video 5 hours long, but really quick, you can get into all levels of quality of sword. I mean, you can spend thousands and thousands on a sword. What I will eventually review are just really practical swords that I think you're getting a lot for your money, just like this one.
Yep.
That's what a lot of guys call practitioners or dojo sword.
I hate ornamental swords.
I do too.
I've got a little collection of my own, and if I get a sword, it's got to be functional.
That's how I am. Yeah, it's got to have some fighting capability.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, is there any more cuts left in that melon there, my friend?
Just one straight through. I'm not going to do a big solid one because I don't want to cut all the way through all the steel and everything, which I probably... Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, we're not showing anything by cutting melon here, so it's not like a cutting test. It's just a demonstration to show, so you're connecting with something during your technique.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Can you put that here? I'll grab the sword from you. Can you do the heavy lifting and put that other melon up, and we'll work that thing over? Hey, if you want to eat that, dude, have at it.
I might actually.
Have at it. This would be a shame to waste it. I use regular knife terminology on swords. Just because my guys understand it. I mean, we could do all the Japanese correct nomenclature, and it just confuses guys that are not into swords.
And I don't know it either, so we just be kind of...
Every time I see it, a guy will say the Japanese name, and then they'll translate it. I'm like, well, why don't you just say the name?
Yeah.
You know, if you're a practitioner, you're in the culture, I understand.
Definitely.
You're in the community. You have to talk the lingo in the community, but most guys watching this are not in the community. They'll understand really quickly if I say the handle.
Yeah. Exactly.
Everyone understands it.
Yes.
Okay. All right, dude. That same guy is back and he's talking smack. Here we go. This is, I think, a longer handle too, OJ. Maybe not.
It is. Yeah.
Is it? I love those long katana
Gives
handles.
you a little bit more control of the weapon.
Let me ask you this: as you're doing a cut, can you push down on that handle and accelerate your cut even more?
Yeah.
Like you pop it.
That's probably what it's doing, and it just that feels the correct way to do it. But just basically.
Yeah, that.
Kind of following through with that motion there. Same, particularly on that side. I'm not cutting here, but I'm actually following through on that. Okay, so yeah.
Cool.
Sure.
Nice. All right, man. Guys talking smack. You're going to do a lateral. What would be your preferred cut on a bad guy? Not side to side, right?
No, it would be downward 45.
Remind us again.
So
We know what you're talking about. We would just like to see it.
Coming through here.
And then you'd go right into a freaking...
You could go into a thrust.
Yeah, thrust.
Or you could come back on a number 4 angle. Just gotta keep it simple.
Okay, let me see you throw that sword around before you hit it.
It's gonna be. I'm not gonna be able to do a downward 45 on here just because of where we've got this prop.
Right.
Okay, so I'll just kind of come across on.
Yeah.
So that's that.
That is that.
Looking through our props here.
I mean, it's kind of fun seeing melon and stuff. I hope I never have to see the real thing, if you know my meaning.
Yes, yeah.
That would not be
and
so
I've
fun.
seen the real thing, not with samurai sword, but edge weapon in my work as a police officer, and it's messy. Every officer at the scene of something like that will always say, "I'd rather get shot any day than have that happen to me."
Yeah. And that kind of brings up a really interesting point when you talk about swords and using them seriously. People don't like getting cut. Juries don't like to see people getting cut. Societally, people don't like it. And so just factor that in. If you're going to use an edged weapon of any kind as a primary defense, you may be swimming upstream against popular and cultural opinion.
We're a gun culture here in the U.S., not so much a blade culture. And so, it's not as culturally acceptable to see people cut to pieces with a blade as it is to see them being shot, whether it's justified self-defense or not.
They don't care.
Exactly.
That's why in movies like action movies, you never see a tactical blade coming out, which could end the fight in like half a second.
Exactly.
I'm watching these guys roll around like, where's the tactical blade? But culturally, people don't want to see people getting sliced and their guts coming out.
And tactically in those close ranges, where most police shootings happen, the edge weapon is actually more dangerous than the firearm. less survivable statistically, and just more of an effective weapon.
I could not agree more.
Yep.
It takes time and distance to employ a gun, no matter how good you are.
And, yeah.
Edge weapon right there, especially with something like this, dude.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a guy's in a house and your SWAT team sent in to clear a guy who knows what he's doing with this?
Yeah,
I wouldn't go in. I would never send my team in against something like that.
And I've never seen a trained person is not likely to be the crazy dude that starts swinging swords around, but
True.
you do get the crazies with swords. You know, unfortunately, they're not that well trained when they use them, and we have guns.
But that goes back to our original point too, is that you're a practitioner, you're not, you get one good swing on a guy, even if it's an officer in body armor, there's going to be some damage.
There will be. Yeah,
with a sword like this.
Most definitely.
I mean, this is a seriously wicked sword. It's tempered, nice edge on it.
Yeah.
We're not really showing it here, but
luckily,
it's
the
nasty.
sword of this size is not as easy to conceal as maybe a smaller edge weapon would be, and so hopefully, if that was the scenario, the bad guy had a sword, you'd see it long before you engage him, and you'd create some distance.
On a related note, Kick-Ass 2 is coming to a theater near you.
And there you go.
All right, man. I guess we got to wrap it up. Anything else, Jared?
That's it. Yeah, I think that's the points I wanted to make. Utilizing mobility, your basic cutting and slashing angles, learning how to control the blade, because if you don't control the weapon as you're striking with it, it's going to control you essentially.
Right.
If you do wild swings and now you're all over the place, you're not controlling where your cuts are, and you're not controlling the weapon so that you can follow up and defend against what may be coming at you. So I don't want to let the weapon control me with its momentum, but I want to have control over what the weapon is doing so that I can have quick follow-up cuts or defensive countermeasures.
That's a great point. And how about being disarmed, someone taking the sword from you? You do a wild swing, do that baseball swing and end up where you were, like right there. Can a guy come into you and then tangle up with you trying to get control of the sword?
Yes, and that's what we call moving to zero pressure. 2 points of zero pressure, the forehand and the backhand position. And that's how you defend against. You can't defend it from, the advantage of this is distance. If I get inside the effective distance of the weapon, then I can actually have some control over the weapon wielder. So if you're employing this in defense, you don't want someone to close that distance on you, because then they're going to be able to control you.
Great point. Yeah, you just lost your advantage.
Yeah.
That's Officer Jared in the Nutnfancy project. He is with a SWAT department, and he's also a defensive tactics, combative arts instructor. Thank you for your time, sir.
You're welcome.
We hope to see you again.
Definitely.
Don't be so freaking scarce, dude.
If you'd answered my calls, I would have been on the show a little while ago.
What? Negative, Ghost Rider. Pattern is full. All right, brother. Thank you.
Good to see you, man.
See ya.